The WCC Weekly Recap for Gonzaga Nation SI. I'm Dan Dickau here, bringing you a few of the results from the previous week, previewing a little bit of what's to come in the WCC because it's a big one. Last week, it was a tremendous week for the league as far as some great games. You've got a lot of eyes nationally right now on the WCC because going into the last week's games, four teams looked like they were in. Coming out of last week's games, it looks like three are in. That fourth still has a chance, but they've got to have a great end to the regular season as well as a run in the WCC tournament. So the four-bid league is not dead. But it is on life support. So we'll get right into it. Gonzaga, they won both games this week. They wrapped up an outright season title, which is ultimately the goal of Coach Few every single year, is winning conference tournaments, winning conference titles, and then preparing to win conference tournament titles, and that's exactly what they did. So they now sit at 12-0. St. Mary's 10-3, USF 8-5, Santa Clara 8-5, USD 7-7. The Portland Pilots, BYU at 7-6. The Portland Pilots 6-6. Pacific 3-8, LMU 2-1, and Pepperdine 1-13. The big surprise, University of Portland Pilots. Shante Leggins has the Pilots absolutely on a roll, and it's interesting to say they're on a roll. They're playing unbelievable basketball compared to where they've been the last few years. So it's a lot of excitement in Portland. The crowds are starting to show back up at the Chiles Center. I think that's great to see. And the nice thing is, in years past, you would look at their KenPom and their net ratings. They would be in the 300s. They're now 220-ish. And so right now with the league, you're looking at Pepperdine, I believe, the only team in the 300s in regards to net or KenPom, and that doesn't tell the whole story about their potential for next season. So I think everything bodes really well for this league continuing to trend upwards. But that being said, there's a lot of pushback nationally on the league, and I think it's so much because Gonzaga has distanced themselves from the league. But in all actuality, Gonzaga's even distanced themselves from a lot of the country over the last 5-6 years. They're the most consistent and successful program, and it's become a joy to follow, a joy to watch. And with their dominance is going to come a lot of criticism, and that has definitely been the case. But to continue on with the WCC recap, again, Gonzaga wrapped up the WCC title. BYU looked as if they were in. Now they're looking as if they are on the bubble and having to play these last couple weeks. The bracket preview show on CBS on Saturday had BYU in, but then they went and lost on Saturday at St. Mary's, and that was a tough one for them. So to recap last week, Thursday's games, obviously, Gonzaga did not play on Thursday. They played on Wednesday when they beat Pepperdine in Malibu. But Thursday, St. Mary's over USF. That's a big one. St. Mary's has, I think, absolutely solidified themselves in the field. They won 69-64. UP over USD 92-60. Santa Clara over LMU in a tight one 84-80. And Santa Clara has been playing much better basketball as of late, and we'll touch on that in a second. But on Saturday, St. Mary's with the same exact score, 69-64 over BYU this time instead of over USF. I think, to me, that's the one that knocks BYU out of the field at this moment in time. They got to take care of business the last two games of the season. They have to make a deep run, I think, in the WCC tournament, but it's not out of the picture. They'll have their opportunities to improve their net and their KenPom in that conference tournament. But in that game, Tommy Kuhse, 26 points to lead the way for St. Mary's. I think St. Mary's is a true and absolute lock for the NCAA tournament at this time. Pacific over LMU, 69-68. Jeremiah Bailey had 22 points, including the game-winning layup with about 15 seconds left. The one thing I will say about Pacific, their record sits at 3-8, but they play hard and they've been in a lot of games. It's one of those things where you want to say a team is something that they're not, but they're showing signs of life, and they are not going to be a fun out for anybody that draws them in the WCC tournament. University of Portland, 77-74 over Pepperdine. Moses Woods had 24 points. And again, like I said to start off, Shante Lagan's doing an amazing job in Portland right now, really getting that program turned around because, quite frankly, they were awful the last few years under Terry Porter. Gonzaga locked up the WCC outright. Senior night was a fun night, although it was a bit of a challenge. 81-69 over Santa Clara. The score is a little bit misleading. Gonzaga was in control, but Santa Clara did a really good job of kind of mucking up the game, making it physical, taking Gonzaga out of being able to play with a lot of flow on the offensive end. Gonzaga had 81 points, but they only shot 40% from the field. And that's, I believe, their lowest total or second lowest total of the season. I think Tarleton State also drove their field goal percentage numbers down, if I remember quickly off the top of my head. But Drew Timme had 23, Andrew Nembhard 21, Rajir Bolton 18, and Chet Holmgren 10 on senior night. It'll be interesting to see if it is going to be senior night for Drew Timme after all, because he's a junior. Lots of talk of him going to the NBA. I think it's a foregone conclusion that Chet Holmgren will be gone for the NBA next year. So they were able to celebrate the four seniors: Andrew Nembhard, Rajir Bolton, Matt Lang, Will Graves, and then Chet Holmgren. And I believe they probably celebrated Drew Timme as well. But that was a great week in the WCC. Looking forward to this week. We got some great games. I love what USF has done with all of the COVID postponement and cancellations of games. They've been proactive to get as many games possible. And so, you saw them play a quick scheduled game against Loyola Chicago that unfortunately for them, they lost in Salt Lake City during many teams' pause in January. They had an opening on their calendar. They had a chance, and them and Pacific rescheduled the game of theirs that was delayed. And so they're going to play that on Monday night. I think that's great by both teams to go ahead and get that game played. But then you look at the rest of the schedule. Thursday, LMU's at BYU. And again, BYU can't have any slip-ups. The Pilots, who are playing really well, at Pacific. St. Mary's is at USD. And again, USD is at a tremendous year this year, based off the expectations that they had. So they're 7-7. They've played well at home. They have a chance to knock off St. Mary's, but St. Mary's playing really well right now. And then the really interesting one, Thursday, Gonzaga at USF. If USF can win that game in San Francisco, and it's always been a hard place for Gonzaga to play, I think they would lock up an NCAA tournament bid. If they lose, it doesn't look good, but it's not dead, because if you look at all their metrics, their analytics, they're solidly in the tournament still at this time. If they lose, I still think they'll have to have a great showing in the WCC tournament, but it's an important game for USF nonetheless. Moving on to Saturday, Gonzaga finishes at St. Mary's. Whoever put the schedule together at the league office, I think they were having a lot of fun challenging Gonzaga in the final week of the regular season. They may have also thought it was going to go down to a matchup, Gonzaga-St. Mary's, which it typically has done at times over the years. But that's going to be a fun one to watch. The Pilots are at Santa Clara. Pacific will be at LMU. Pepperdine will be at BYU. And that's big because, again, BYU cannot afford any slip-ups, and they must play extremely well in the conference tournament, I think, to get themselves back in the bubble. So lots of good action going on this week in the WCC. We're coming down to the final week. It'll be interesting to see who separates themselves for the awards. I think you can go lots of different directions right now. I think Coach of the Year is up for grabs. Coach Few is always up there, especially when they had so many new faces, especially when they had looks like they're going to, have an undefeated season in league. You could also look at Shante Leggins because of what the turnaround in Portland has looked like. I think those would be my two front runners. I think freshman of the year is a foregone conclusion. It's Chet Holmgren. That's easy without a doubt. But I think the player of the year in the conference is going to be interesting. I think you could go Drew Timme, you could go Chet Holmgren. It's just a matter of which direction the voters want to go. So great week coming up at the WCC. Looking forward to all the action. Check us out on Gonzaga Nation SI.